Great. Hello to anyone who might be watching this. This is going to be a conversation between myself, Erin, and Catherine Pawasarat Sensei, who is one of the guiding teachers of Clear Sky Meditation Center. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about the center. Catherine and I met at the Future of American Buddhism conference back at the beginning of June at the Garrison Institute, and we heard all about this very, very interesting and remote center in a Tibetan lineage, and they have some programs that I think could be a great fit for some of the folks who are interested in Dharma Gates. And so we're going to just talk more and learn more about what Clear Sky is like, and also about Catherine's background in practice, and what's the sort of the deep background for the kind of container that they're holding at Clear Sky Center. So a little bit about the context here is my name is Aaron. I help run this project called Dharma Gates. We're in our 4th year. We're a 501c3 dedicated to opening pathways into formal practice and deep meditation practice, particularly for young people at our in-person events, but our online offerings are open to everybody. So you're welcome. Use this as a resource, and anything else on a YouTube channel. And yeah, there's more I could say about that, but I think for now we'll just go into the conversation. So I'm curious, I was reading through your bio, Catherine, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on, but I'm curious, maybe just a 5 to 10 minute, like what was the early sort of touch point? Like where was your entry point into practice, and how did you make contact with the world of spirituality, and yeah, well, how did that sort of lead into your spiritual life? And then eventually we'll get to where you are now, but I think that'll be a good starting point.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. And hi, everybody. Let's see, my entry into spiritual life. Well, when I was a young woman, I graduated from college and I really wanted to travel the world. And I was a Spanish and English comparative lit major. I really wanted to travel in Latin America, but I didn't have I was a young woman traveling alone, and I didn't have a lot of resources. So that seemed like a kind of sketchy idea. And I'd taken one semester of Japanese in college, and my Japanese prof said, "Oh, well, go to Japan and teach English, and you can make good money and save and travel after that. And it's really safe there." So I did. I just jumped on a plane and headed over. And it was a really wonderful and exciting experience, and it was also a very challenging experience. I didn't know anybody there, and the culture was so different, and I had the standard issues everybody has. I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I was kind of troubled about all kinds of things, personal reasons and the state of the planet and everything. And I really wanted to see a therapist, and there weren't psychotherapy was not that well developed in Japan, and certainly not in English, which is the language I wanted to do it in. So instead I went and got a tarot reading, and my background is very not that. My background is more kind of mainstream, I guess, or more conservative. And so I didn't tell anybody I was going to get a tarot reading, but she really nailed it. She really nailed how I was feeling. And so I started studying metaphysics with that woman. And tarot led to kind of chakra balancing meditations, led to astrology. This was all really interesting, but it didn't quite scratch the itch. And I got involved with ayahuasca. This was back in the early to mid 90s, and ended up moving down to Brazil for a while to pursue that, because after all, I did want to travel around Latin America. And that was a really great experience and very profound in a lot of ways. And I struggled with integrating everything that I was experiencing. And I had a really strong feeling throughout all my ayahuasca journeys that I really needed to learn how to meditate. And I went back to Japan. I was actually going to sell all my stuff and move to Brazil permanently, but the ayahuasca thing was not quite working out. It was really, we had a lot of challenges around community, and I think it's basically about integration. We'd experience these amazing ecstasies and profound insights on our ayahuasca journeys, and then struggle to marry them to our daily lives and our relationships with one another. And someone invited me to a Buddha Dharma class, and I kind of thought I needed all the help I could get. And so I went, and it really made a lot of sense to me. And I didn't have the tools. We didn't have the tools as a community to do this integration work I'm talking about with the ayahuasca. And the Buddha Dharma seemed to offer those tools. So I kept going, and I stuck. And now 25 years later, we've got a center, and my teacher is my partner, and we are living and practicing in conscious community here in the British Columbia Rocky Mountains. So that's the kind of condensed version.
Thanks for sharing. There's a lot of, yeah, it's an interesting way in, and there's a lot of interesting threads there.
Yeah.
Sort of interaction, I think, between the sort of psychedelic assisted therapy and plant medicine world and meditation world is just like simmering up from like every angle, I feel like. And so that's interesting to encounter that earlier on. And I'm curious, maybe you could share a little bit about what's the kind of lineage or the main sort of source of the sort of Buddhist teachings that you've engaged with, or what's your relationship to lineage been over time? And yeah.
Yeah, great question. We were talking before we started recording, Aaron and I, about Zen, and I did end up living in Kyoto, Japan for a total of about 20 years. And Kyoto is really deeply influenced by, well, Buddhism in general, but in particular by Rinzai Zen. And I studied a number of traditional Japanese arts while I was living there, and those traditional arts have also been influenced a lot by Zen. And so, although I never really practiced Zen formally while I was there, I learned later that I had picked up a lot through practicing the arts and through living there. And my partner's path has been very Zen. His personality is very Zen. His name's Qapel. However, I really just met my meditation teacher through karma. He was teaching, I went, I loved it, I stayed. The practice has worked for me. And I was really intrigued to read the Dharma Gates website and to think about actually knowing about what path you start on before you start. That was kind of an intriguing concept to me, because I really just ended up here. And this lineage is very eclectic, which seems to suit me. I seem to have had an eclectic background, although it does kind of confound even me sometimes. And so I'll tell you the story. Our teacher, my teacher's teacher, who I also received lay ordination from, his name is Namgyal Rinpoche. And he was born and raised in Canada, kind of a child prodigy. I think he went to university when he was 16 or something. He passed in 2003 when he was 72 years old. And he was Canada's representative to the Youth Communist Congress, went to Moscow in, must have been the 40s or 50s, And I don't think he was impressed, because he stopped doing that, went to a Baptist university in the States. And when he graduated, he moved to London and was writing about for a music newspaper, I think, writing about classical music. Anyway, he studied the Western mysteries in England and awakened on that Western mystical path, and continued to practice that in London, and met a Theravadan monk named Sayadaw U Tilawanta, and who invited him back to Burma, back to Myanmar, to learn meditation. So in the 50s, his name was George Dawson at the time. George Dawson went to Myanmar, was ordained as a Theravadan monk, and became Ananda Bodhi, was ordained at the Shwedagon, and stayed in Myanmar and practiced and studied there and in Thailand for about 7 years. Came back to London and started a vihara there, and had students, was teaching as Ananda Bodhi, and this would have been the 1950s, I think. And it was such a different time. People were giving him different properties in England, old abandoned abbeys that are now in the National Trust. And someone gave him a property in Scotland, which he then gave to Akong Rinpoche and Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and that became Samye Ling. So must have been very interesting times, mixed with the likes of Aldous Huxley. And anyhow, would go traveling with students around the world. Travel's always been an important part of our lineage. And on one trip, he traveled to India, and as part of that also went to Sikkim and had an audience with the 16th Karmapa, the previous Karmapa. And students who were there have told me that they were supposed to have an audience, and they said, and then the tone really changed, and they realized that something was happening, and there was a kind of spontaneous recognition of Ananda Bodhi as Namgyal Rinpoche. And the Namgyal Rinpoches are known for bringing the teachings to new lands. And so he returned to Canada and was formally enthroned in Canada, and was part of the historic trip together with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche of bringing the Karmapa over to North America, along with Kalu Rinpoche and I think the 4 regions and so on. Anyhow, but Namgyal Rinpoche was very interested in the universal quality of awakening. So as time went by, he really left behind, he used all the methods, and so our lineage uses Western mysteries, and so that would be tarot and Kabbalah and Tree of Life, for example, and also Theravadan practices, as well as Vajrayana practices. We draw on all of these, and also are trying to transcend all of them, because awakening is universal and doesn't really belong to any single tradition. And we believe we're entering a kind of post-Buddhist world. And so basically we use anything that we think works. And that's a lot of things. So that keeps our teaching exciting and adaptable and flexible, and really keeps us on our toes.
Mm-hmm.
To use it all as a practice.
It's so interesting to hear about the sort of, on the one hand, it's like a very deep and relatively close to the source, like transmission of Buddhism to the US. And then on the other hand, it's like a wildly diverse and open method of teaching, which is I've been increasingly realizing just how wide the spectrum is in terms of very, very almost static lineages that have they're not really open to adding more in terms of the actual pedagogy and system. And that's not a judgment, it's just a fact. and then all the way through. I'd say the other view would view like awakening as basically like this innate possibility that like we use whatever tools are available and functional to cultivate that. And that's sounds like you guys are pretty far on that kind of end, which I think is really cool, really interesting. And
Thank you. It's yeah, it's challenging for us too. If I do you mind if I
yeah,
share
yeah.
something? I think one of the big challenges for us has been to really include business practices as part of our teaching, because we were really attached to meditation and a kind of pure Dharma sort of view, I guess, that we had. And when we got our retreat center, Clear Sky, in 2004, we didn't know how to run a center, and we were kind of trying to meditate our way through it. And as you know, that's pretty tough. And so, yeah, we had some really incomplete views about, for example, the business world, that it was kind of impure and we didn't want to go there, and hopefully somebody else would do it. And then realizing that there's nothing impure except the way that we treat these things, or the way that we live, or how we're coming at it. And so to embrace those, to help us have a sustainable center that could really benefit a lot of beings, has been a big part of our path the last 15 years or so.
That's wonderful. I'm noticing in your bio it says interest in the world of sort of social entrepreneurship and spiritual entrepreneurship. Or oh, I don't think you quite used that word, spiritual entrepreneurship, but still that intersection has been one that I'm really interested in, of just like the actually doing good things in the world through the vehicle of whatever kind of structures are there, but from the angle of Dharma practice. I mean, that's really what Dharma Gates is what this whole project is. So sounds like that's relevant to how you're kind of considering or thinking in terms of the space there. I'd be curious if how that like whether that filters into the practice there, the sort of training of living at Clear Sky, or is it applied, or uh, yeah, anything that comes up there.
Yeah, it very much does. Coming across social entrepreneurship was a really great stimulation for us, a really great resource for us. And because it focuses so much on sustainability, and so we adopted a quadruple bottom line of spiritual sustainability, which a wholesome mind state is the ultimate
Mhm.
sustainable state, right? So spiritual sustainability, social sustainability in terms of our sangha, and also our relationships with the broader community, financial sustainability, which all of us spiritual types were hoping we could skip and somebody would fund us, right? But that's such a speaking of incomplete views, and self-sabotaging too, and as well as environmental sustainability is really important for us. So we include all of these. These are great decision-making tools, have really helped us, helped guide us, and then they're great tools for living and practicing together. And so our program is really that everybody people are going to have kind of personal predominances, and that's fine, but we all want to be fairly balanced in those four. And so that's part of the training here, and part of the program.
And it looks like my understanding is the primary form of like residency, if someone were to come and want to visit and practice with you all, is the 3-month intensive program. is that the main, or do you have longer term volunteers or people who live there, or is it that's the main offering?
We do. So we have a number. It's always morphing as we discover what works and try new things and meet needs of people who are either living here or coming here. The 3-month Karma Yoga program is a great entry point to get grounded in the practice. We get a lot of people who are in their Saturn returns, so around 28 years old and in transition. We get a lot of people in transition in general, but quite a lot of people in their late 20s who know they want a change but aren't quite sure, know they want a wholesome change but aren't quite sure how to go about it. And it's been such a great pleasure and honor for us to be able to provide that. And for some people, it's kind of a orientation or reorientation and a launching pad. And then some people stay for another 3 months, and some people stay for a year, and some people now live here. And that's been really great too. And a lot of us have struggled with this, maybe either our personal lives, such as our relationships and or our careers, feeling like those things are in competition with our spiritual life and our practice. And so we're really trying to develop all of our programs so that we can get them all working well together, because it's tough to juggle those things if you feel like they're not all unified.
Mhm.
So it's an ongoing path for sure, and it keeps getting better and better, so that's exciting.
Mhm. I'm getting this theme of like a very strong focus on like bringing all aspects of life into the picture, like not to, maybe this is another thread of a sort of, there's almost the radical Theravada view of like creating completely this space completely free of distractions to focus in meditation, which is a way. And then the view of like, we're actually going to bring everything together into a stew and learn how to practice well there. And um, that's the sort of the sense I'm getting, although maybe that's inaccurate.
Yeah, you're spot on. We like to do, we like to have the range. Part of what we practice is if we are familiar with the extremes and comfortable with the extremes. We talk a lot about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's a lot of uncomfortable stuff happening anyway, so we may as well get comfortable with it. And we do that by intentionally inviting the uncomfortable stuff so that it's no longer uncomfortable. And then our middle is really strong, and then so the middle way, it's a broad middle. And we do have meditation retreats that are formal and very focused and just on meditation. And we have meditation cabins where we do solitary retreats. And then we also have this daily program going on of right, and how do we, as individuals and as a community, how do we pay for all of this? How do we live our lives in such a way that we could leave and it wouldn't be too scary or disruptive, so that there's a connection with the world, but there's also this refuge that we can enjoy and share with other people and other beings, not just humans. That's an important part of it too.
Sounds great. Um, I'm curious if so my sense is, given our audience, I imagine some folks might be interested in like a cabin retreat or a sort of more solitary thing, but I bet my sense is the 3-month program would be the primary sort of like point of contact between Dharma Gates folks and you all. And I'm curious, maybe you could share a little more about what the curriculum is like, or what it's like to actually do that and how it works. And um, yeah, what are people doing during the day other than some retreat time and all of that?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Well, it is is an intense experience to be here. We've got we've got a full schedule, and it's focused. And part of that is having an integration day, so people do have some time and space to process and tend to personal interests or personal needs. And so, yeah, daily meditation, 3 meals a day together, being in community is a big part of it. And then there's daily contemplation. So there's a curriculum, and the curriculum, we run through a lot of the things that we found indispensable for living and practicing here together, and also kind of the best of what we found that helps us apply modern methodologies that work for our spiritual life as well and our community life, as well as for what we're going to need, our life skills and job skills that are going to serve us well for the rest of our lives. So for example, we have communication skills, the different levels of speaking and listening from Theory U, for example. We draw on fifth discipline. We have our own 5 principles that guide Clear Sky. And these are simple, and they seem kind of obvious, but are, classically challenging to implement in our daily lives, such as it's easier with others, and structure and routine are our friends. So we work a lot on helping people be comfortable with reaching out and to ask for help or to offer help to one another, and to set up structures and routines so that just to make our lives work more effortlessly. Cleaning up big areas of your life frees up energy is another principle. So we can have these kind of dark corners of our lives that we sort of don't look at too much, like back taxes, or even just a messy room or something. And so we try to take care of all those things so that our energy gets freed up. Anyhow, our program walks us through these different kinds of methodologies and philosophies, and then we practice them in our daily life here at the center, and have the time and space to experiment with them, discuss them, and so on.
Mhm.
So does that answer your question about what
Yeah.
a daily life is like?
Yeah,
It also depends on the season, because of course the summer season we do a lot of stuff outside, and winter would be more inside.
Mhm. Comes to my mind that it sounds like it could be a really wonderful offering for uh, both someone just getting into practice who has that sort of interest of like, how does this apply to my life, but also possibly someone like coming out of a lot of intensive practice who's considering like, how do I bring this to bear on the world? It's like heavy focus on that kind of integration, like how do we communicate with other people, how do we show up, like what are the weird corners of our personality that might not be fully integrated with our sitting practice. And there's a whole, it's kind of a whole kind of work that is um, I think can be underemphasized in the sort of classical just meditate until you get enlightened world.
Yeah, that interface with whatever it is, the rest of our lives, or the people that I meet, or my job. Yeah, that interface can be a challenging aspect, especially in the West, which doesn't have this long tradition of meditation, different from Asia, for example.
Mm,
So we
cool.
do have a number of interests, and this is more the environmental bottom line. We do have a farm and a food forest here, and we do ecological restoration, and we're building a couple more meditation cabins, and we got one of them is our first straw bale construction building. We're trying to do green building as much as possible. And so I think we hope that these things are also of personal interest or sometimes professional interest to different people, and that's a great way for people to either learn new skills or share skills that they already have.
Mhm, mhm. Great. I don't have too many other questions about the program. I'm curious if there's anything else that you'd want to share with folks who are interested in learning more about Clear Sky or considering coming, or um, just generally, and then we can kind of start to close it up.
Okay. We've really tried our best to share as much as possible and as candidly as possible on our website,
Mhm.
clearskycenter.org. And then we do recommend to people who are interested to check out our teachings first. And you can do that either on clearskycenter.org or on planetdharma.com. And Planet Dharma is kind of the virtual arm of
Mhm.
it's the virtual teachings. Clear Sky's the physical center. And yeah, people will know if it feels right for them.
Mhm.
And yeah, if it does, give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Um, and do you guys have, I guess, one more little question popped up. Do you guys have does sound like there's a way to stay involved remotely through the Planet Dharma sort of online teaching portion. Do you guys have like formal students or a sort of sangha or community that is non not physically at Clear Sky, or how does
Oh yeah. Oh
is
yeah.
that
Thanks for
something?
asking that. We have most of our Sangha is not physically at Clear Sky or comes for retreats or to stay here for say a month or so at a time and then go back. So Planet Dharma serves a really important purpose to help us stay connected and practice together virtually in those in between times.
Cool. That's good to know. So
Yeah.
if someone
And
went,
our and sorry, Aaron.
yeah.
Actually, our sangha is very international. We're a fairly small sangha, but we come from a lot of different countries.
Mhm.
And we really, I think that's part of our travel being such an important part of our practice. We really try to cultivate a yeah this what does global dharma look like? That's why we named it Planet Dharma. You know, what is awakening beyond borders?
Mhm.
And for me, that's a really exciting frontier.
Great. So if somebody came on the 3-month program, they could stay involved to some extent online and come to online
Oh yeah,
programming, maybe come back and visit at some point. That's good to
oh
know.
yeah.
Yeah, that can be a bit uh, intense sometimes to go really, really get close to a community and then go back and not really stay in contact. So,
Yeah, and when we were at the Future of American Buddhism conference, that's what I presented on was digital Dharma. I think it's because we our kind of genesis was in Japan, an group of people from different countries, mostly expats in Japan, but so we were a pretty techie bunch. And then we bought property in Canada, in British Columbia, and for a while it was kind of Japan and Canada, and so we stayed in touch online very closely from the beginning.
mhm,
So it's a space we're really comfortable in.
that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, I don't have too much else, so I think maybe we'll wrap up there. I know we did a little dedication of merit at the beginning. Maybe you want to end with a dedication of merit for this.
Yeah, we just keep it simple, but helps us remember that it's about the big we. May all of our efforts benefit all beings.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks. All right.
Thank you.